Welcome to Spirits of Whiskey. We explore the wide world of whiskey through the many colorful personalities who make it, promote it, write it, and more.
With each podcast, Kerry Moynahan, a certified bourbon steward and bartender, and yours truly, Philip Dobard, director of the cocktail collection, interview whiskey's most important names.
From high-profile makers, blenders, and ambassadors
to out-of-the-way innovators and remote pioneers.
Join us as we discover the people and elements that give the water of life its spirit.
The internet and the rise of social media have had a dramatic effect on the spirits industry, helping to create taste communities and fostering the development of what social scientists call associational infrastructure. That's a metaphor for the societal scaffolding people use to find like-minded individuals, build associations, and maintain contact. Our guest today is one of those builders. Doug Stone founded and operates two websites, for whiskylovers.com and for tequilalovers.com, that serve as web-based homes for people passionate about whiskey and agave spirits, respectively.
Stay tuned for Whiskey Chronicles and learn all about the stories of Balvenie. There's a new expression in the stories range of the Balvenie single malt line. It's a 19-year-old called the Edge of Burnhead Wood, and it's a permanent addition to the collection.
Expressions in the series, which debuted in 2019, take their names from tales passed from generation to generation of craftsmen who work at the Balvenie distillery. This is the fourth expression in stories. Others in the collection are the sweet toast of American oak, a week of peat, and a day of dark barley.
Each whiskey story can be heard on Balvenie's website.
What's particularly special about this new expression is that it's the distillery's first whiskey made exclusively with ingredients grown on its estate in Dufftown. The Edge of Burnhead, created by David C. Stewart, MBE, the Balvenie malt master, features homegrown barley malted at the Balvenie maltings and water from the Conval Hills.
The timing of this release is 127 years to the day since the whiskey production began at the distillery. William Grant acquired the abandoned Balvenie New House and built a distillery there in 1892. On May 1st, 1893, production commenced, as did the rich storytelling tradition that inspired the Balvenie stories. On today's Spirits of Whiskey, we have Doug Stone, founder of forwhiskylovers.com. Hi, Doug. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, Kerry. How are you?
Good. Philip, you want to start us off?
Absolutely. Doug, you run an e-commerce website for whiskey lovers.
The e-commerce is how we keep the lights on. It really was designed and intended to be a community for people who love whiskey. So we have expert content, so you can read about whiskey from people who have experience and are fairly knowledgeable. We've got a community of people who love whiskey who can interact with each other and share the passion, and then we've got the store.
Okay. All right. So there are different sections on the site where one can explore whiskeys of the world, distilleries. I noticed there's a rather robust news
we have content contributors who are from all different parts of the world of spirits, from bartenders to master distillers who contribute content. We also aggregate content from some of the best blogs around the web. So we don't just want to be about ourselves. We don't profess to be anything more than anybody else, and we want to help other bloggers and other experts who have websites in the category. We want them to be successful too. So we take a snippet of whatever it is they published and we put it on our website and drive people to their website.
So it's part forum, part clearinghouse, again, part e-commerce, but as you said, in order to keep the lights on.
And more that sort of makes it sort of sound like it's something we do because we have to. It's actually something we do because we love. The focus of the e-commerce is small, independent distilleries that aren't available nationwide and certainly not in your average local liquor store,
That's awesome.
All right, so you give them a window on the world,
we don't try to compete. We're not Grizzly. We're not Minibar. Our business model is, a bottle of Wiggly Bridge or Smuggler's Notch or Grand Traverse or another small independent distillery to your door in a week or two, because you just can't get anywhere else.
Right.
The whiskeys are fairly priced. We don't charge anybody an arm and a leg. We want to help these more than anything. We want to help these small independent distillers get the product to market, and so that's really what we're focused on.
That's great. So how did you get
All
this
right.
whole project started, and how long have you been doing this website?
My background is marketing. I'm a marketing guy. I've worked in the hospitality industry. I've run online marketing agencies. And about 10 years ago, when there were three websites called MySpace, Facebook, and Friendster at the same level, I viewed them as sort of the Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and Gimbals or Marshall Fields of the online world. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to create the Williams-Sonoma and the Dick's Sporting Goods, the specialty sort of community. So my idea was to create a bunch of micro-social networks that targeted people's lifestyle passions.
Nice.
I was going to start a business with that. And then when I decided, I had a bunch of ideas, but I decided to eat my own dog food for the first community and do whiskey.
Nice.
Yeah, I grew up in whiskey. My dad was a big-time Scotch drinker. In my house as a kid, and teenager and young adult, if you wanted to drink anything that wasn't like, bottom shelf ShopRite vodka, then you had to drink whiskey, because that's what my dad drank. All the white spirits were the cheapest ones he could possibly buy, and all the brown spirits were pretty decent. So
nice.
I grew up a whiskey drinker, and I've always loved it.
All right. How long have you been doing this?
Right. So when did I start? So the thing started in 2010 as a hobby. I put up the blog. I cobbled together a store. I put up the community, and I started fulfilling the store part of it out of a friend's liquor store in New Jersey. I drive there a couple days a week and do it out of his basement.
Oh, wow.
And after 2 years of that, in 2012, I got a call from a fellow named Mark Gillespie, who
Mark Gillespie.
You guys know Mark.
Our competition with the podcast. Yes.
Yeah, well, Mark's a great guy. He's been around forever, and he's he's one of my favorite people. Back then, Mark was also just starting his business, or he had a couple thousand listeners or something like that.
Yeah.
And Mark Gillespie calls me up one day and says, "Where?" This is in 2012. "Where were you last night?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, why weren't you in Louisville?" And I said, "Well, why would I be in Louisville?" And he said, "Because you won Online Retailer of the Year for Whiskey Magazine."
Nice.
And I was like, right. That's what I said. Not what you said, Kerry. I was still upset.
Accepting the award on Doug Stone's behalf.
I was like, "Are you kidding me? I didn't even know I was nominated." So I took that information. With that, I went to my wife in 2012 and said, "I think I have something here. I think I want to concentrate on this full time." At the time, the site was called ForScotchLovers.com. My wife, agreed. She said, "Go ahead and do it." So in 2012, this has been a full-time job. And we immediately, one of the first things we did was relaunch For Scotch Lovers as For Whiskey Lovers.
Love it.
And, a couple of years later, did the deals.
That's awesome.
Doug, we noticed the topic of the Edge of Burnhead Wood. The release is on your website's news feed. And these are highly anticipated releases and not always the easiest to get your hands on. Do you have a secret stash of this? Have you had the opportunity to taste it?
Actually, that's not true. From time to time, we will have a secret stash. More than what we have, more than having a secret stash. Because when you start to have a secret stash, you have to have inventory. When you have to have inventory, you have to have a warehouse. And then these are all the things that create people's prices from having to go up. So we take a different approach to it. And we work with a network of retailers around the country. Guys, some of the top whiskey stores in the country, and we're in we're in all four of the top markets, meaning by state. And so, if it's out there, we can probably get it. There's certain things that, frankly, I'd rather not be bothered with. We don't do, I get emails all the time about Pappy McCoy. It's just not in our wheelhouse. That's a whole thing that we don't. That sort of competitive driving up of prices is something we don't like to be part of. It's a great whiskey. We don't believe it. I don't believe it's worth what a lot of people are willing to pay for it. And I just don't feel right charging people that it's just not the right thing, So.
Right. They want to use you. It's like they want to use you as an instrument in their scheme.
Yeah, well, I mean, the distillery is a brilliant distillery. Buffalo Trace is unquestionably the most successful distillery in the United States. The way they manage their brands is brilliant.
Oh yeah.
It's the the master of the, you've heard, we will talk about trickle down theory. It's the master of the trickle out theory. And they are the masters. And some of their whiskeys we can get at reasonable prices and we sell them for a reasonable markup. And some of their whiskeys like Pappy Van Winkle, we can't get any, enough of to be able to. One of our prerequisites is also something that we want to feel that we can offer to the quote unquote public, meaning we can get our hands on some of it. It's not a bottle. Anybody can contact me about any product, and we can see if we can find a bottle for them of anything, and that includes a Pappy. But in terms of us offering it on our website, we're not going to offer it on our website if we can only get one bottle. That's just not right. We want to be able to offer products that are somewhat readily available, even if it's only 10. If it's a very high-end whiskey, but we can only get 10 of them. Anyhow, that's a long-winded answer. Let's go back to your sorry about the Balvenie.
No, that's okay.
Jesus Christ.
Well, yes, and have you tasted it?
I have not tasted it. I'll tell you that there are very few distilleries that I hold as in high regard as Balvenie and Dave Stewart and everything that goes on there.
Ditto.
I mean, these guys. I was in Scotland years ago. It's like going to France. They say you can't get a bad meal in Paris. You can't get anything but a spectacular whiskey from Balvenie. I mean, they're just
true.
amazing. So I'm sure this release, I've not had it, is going to be amazing. Your answer on can we get it? We probably can get it. I don't know how many bottles they've released, but the answer is we could probably get it.
Have you tasted any of the other three in the story series?
I have tasted the 25-year-old. I have a bottle of the 25-year-old actually at home. I've tasted the 30-year-old, and I've not tasted the mash. I haven't tasted release 6 of the mash tun. I've tasted release 1, I tasted release 2, and I tasted release 5, and that was it.
That's funny. The only one I've tasted is the American Oak 12.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's great. Balvenie, the Portwood 21-year-old, to me, especially for the value, for the dollar, it's just an amazing whiskey. It really is one of my favorites.
Yep, me too. Okay, so one of my favorite things about your website is the Explorers Club. Can you talk about that and how it came to be? And I've actually participated in that myself, and I couldn't guess any of the whiskeys that were sent to me.
So the Whiskey Explorers Club is an idea that I came up with one night at a bar with a fellow named Sam Simmons, who for years was the global brand ambassador for Balvenie and was at the time. He lived in New York. At the time, he was a North American brand ambassador. He lived in New York. And he and I became fast friends. He was a young guy. He was extremely supportive of everything I was doing because I was the first sort of community in the whiskey space. And he was, so he loved it. And Sam and I were out one night in St. Andrews, a bar that I believe is now closed in Manhattan. And we're drinking whiskey and talking at the bar. And over one of our shoulders, I forget which one of us, was a couple. And there was a young kind of let's just say a real sort of New York power guy sitting behind us. And his date. And we heard the guy talking to her about whiskey and how he never drinks anything younger than an 18-year-old. And any whiskey something to the effect of any whiskey that's less than 18 years old is undrinkable. Something along that line.
Wow.
And Sam and I just looked at each other and we rolled our eyes. Sam sort of interrupted the guy and said, "Hey, I heard what you said. Why do we started to talk to the guy about it, and we ended up challenging him. This was a blind taste test. We took his tie off him, wrapped it around his head at the bar. Because Sam was that brand ambassador of Balvenie in New York City, living in New York City. He knew the St. Andrews guys. He knew very well. And he told the bartender at the end of the bar what we were trying to do. And the bartender brought over 4 different whiskeys of varying ages. Two of them were unaged. One was an 8-year-old, and one was a 12-year-old. And we put them in front of the guy. We said to the guy, "Tell us which one you think is the 18-year-old." And he picked one of the unaged whiskeys.
Oh, I love it.
Right.
So I knew nothing about whiskey.
And we I don't mean unaged. I mean no age statement.
Right.
No age statement.
Right. He didn't choose the white dog.
Yeah. And we didn't have anything over 18. We had a We had two no-age statement whiskeys. We had an 8-year-old whiskey, and then we had a 12-year-old whiskey. We said, which one is the 18-year-old? And he guessed one of the no-age statement whiskeys. And we just, took his tie off him and looked at him in the eye and said, F you. And from that, I got the idea that, and it was a very friendly thing we did with this guy. He was blown away. He was a little embarrassed. The woman who was with him gave him a lot of, really gave him a hard time. But, to me, the conversation evolved to, and what was important about it was that the only thing that's important about whiskey is, do you like it? What came out of this conversation was a dialogue between me and Sam that was sort of started from this interaction with this guy. It doesn't matter how old the whiskey is. It doesn't matter what it costs. It often doesn't even matter what kind of whiskey it is, because I've had conversations with people who got sick in college on Jack Daniels and think that they can't drink whiskey. And then you give them a really nice scotch and they're like, wow, this is a whole different thing. From that blind taste test contest at the bar, what this really applies itself to is a club. And the club is a club where all whiskeys are tasted blind. You get, every quarter we send out a pack of 4 50-milliliter bottles. Each bottle is generically labeled with a code. The only way our members can find out what they're tasting is to go to our website, enter the code on the bottle, and play a game. And the game is 9 multiple choice questions that, when you go through the process, you are basically creating your own tasting notes for the whiskey. At the end of the game, you hit submit. We tell you what whiskey you actually tasted. We tell you a whole story about the distillery and the people who make the whiskey. We tell you your score in the game. While there's no right answers, the quote-unquote right answers are either the tasting notes from the distillery or someone we hired has credentials in the industry to provide us with tasting notes. Someone, who's a brand ambassador or something like that. So at the end of the game, we tell you what whiskey you tasted. We tell you the score in the game, and then we give you a 10% discount to buy that whiskey in our online store. For our members, it's a great way for them to experience a broad range of all kinds of whiskeys. Every type of whiskey ends up in that box at some point during the year. From around the world, free of any preconceived notion of age or price or even type of whiskey. You just put it in your mouth, you say, do you like the taste? And that's what it's about.
That's wonderful. Education meets commerce.
Do you use like 4 different complete, like one is a bourbon, one is a scotch, one is an Indian, or do you use something all, or it doesn't matter?
In a typical box, in a typical flight that goes out of 4 whiskeys, we will have a single malt whiskey. We will have a blended whiskey. And the blended whiskey could be a blended Scotch whiskey, or it could be a blended American whiskey, or, just a blended whiskey from anywhere in the world. We'll have a single malt whiskey. We'll have a blended whiskey. We'll have a bourbon. And then the 4th whiskey is a wild card. It'll be a rye. It could be a wheat whiskey. It could be a second of the first 3. It could be a second single malt. But every box always has at least 1 single malt, 1 blended whiskey, and 1 bourbon in it.
That's awesome.
And then,
so how many members of that do you think you have right now?
We have now just north of 300 members.
Wow. How long have you been doing the club?
Yeah, we launched in 2016. We launched.
Okay.
Did I hear you say you control the size of the club?
We were on the Today Show in 2016, or when we launched it. Actually, I'm sorry. We launched in 2014, 6 years ago. We launched in 2014. And in 2016, we were on the Today Show as a Father's Day gift idea. 15 seconds on a table with 20 other things. And we were the second, we were basically the last one that was aired. And we got aired for 15 seconds. I had my whole family in front of the TV. It aired. It was 15 seconds. I slumped down in my chair and looked at my family and said, I'm so sorry I made you watch this. I was like I was expecting like a minute and a half on the whiskey, and it flew by. And within 30 seconds, the register.
And then the website crashed.
There was a truck going by. The reception is best in my house.
Right.
If I step outside, so I don't want. The segment aired, and it flew by, and I apologized to everybody for making them watch this with me. Of course, they said, "Don't be silly." And within 30 seconds, the register started to ring. And within 3 weeks, we had sold almost 1,000 memberships.
Wow.
And we couldn't support it. We grew too fast, too quickly. So we shrunk it down. We managed it. We want to work with small distilleries. We want the distilleries to be able to give us the whiskey and not take too much out of their production line. Whiskey, distilleries can't, these are distilleries, by and large, not all of them, but 80% of the whiskeys in the box are again, small independent distilleries from around the world. And sometimes it's just tough for them to come up with the amount of juice that we need to do the bottling.
Right.
So
Sure, you talk about 1,000 times 50 ml. That's
a lot of whiskey.
Yeah. Right.
So I know when I got it, I just did it a one-time thing. You're still doing that too?
When you say a one-time, so we sell two, I guess you could say, memberships. So one of them it's not really a membership. One is a gift flight that somebody just wants to send somebody one box.
Yeah, right? That's what I did.
We do that. Yep, that's a one-off. And then we sell an annual membership, which is 4 flights over the course of a year.
That's very cool. So, sorry.
So, go ahead. Go ahead, Kerry.
I was going to say.
I was going to move to the next question.
Well,
if you want to continue on that,
an additional question. So, through this whole journey for whiskey lovers, what has been your favorite part?
Oh boy, that's a tough question.
Or what's been the most fun?
I think the most fun for me about the whole thing is meeting all these people and drinking all this great whiskey.
Cool.
I went years ago, five years ago or so, about a few years after I started this, I took a trip to Scotland. I'd never been. I took my dad. We drove. My dad who got me into this whole mess, and we drove around Scotland for 10 days.
Nice.
Going from distillery to distillery, and the people there that we met, and drinking unbelievable whiskey, and then people, anywhere I ever go, whether it's a family vacation or I'm just driving down the road somewhere, if I can stop by a distillery and just try it, I always try to do it and introduce myself to people, almost regardless of what they make, and like to learn about it. And the people who I've met and the whiskey I have drank, it's like, what else? There's very few things I can imagine I'd rather be doing than that are legal.
Right.
I could tell my wife about. It's like what a better way to make a living. It's and then helping them and helping the guys at the distilleries get their product out, and helping the customer looking to find these really cool little distilleries. Someone who doesn't necessarily want to drink Brand X. I don't want to insult anybody, but Brand X, that's a 20,000 case a year or more brand. They want to drink something that's made locally and got a story and all that kind of stuff. And so to try to connect those is ultimately the most rewarding part of it for me.
That's awesome.
Well, speaking of making a living, you also own a restaurant and bar.
I do.
In the Hudson River Valley.
That is correct.
So let's talk cocktails.
Sure.
Not what is your favorite cocktail, but what are your go-tos? Do they tend to be stirred aromatics, shaken, built? Do they tend to be whiskey cocktails?
Our restaurant is also arguably the top whiskey bar on this side of the Hudson, within 25 miles. And so we have, but our neighborhood, the village that we are situated in, it's no more of a whiskey town than it is a vodka town or a gin or a rum town. So we have to You know,
And which village is that?
the name of the village is Piermont, New York. And as you also know, I also own another website called For Tequila Lovers, where we sell tequila and mezcal. So the cocktails that we have at our bar, the number one selling cocktail is a cocktail that's called the Dougie Style, which is a mezcal drink made with El Bujo mezcal. The guy who owns El Bujo is a neighbor here, lives in the next town up, and it's an amazing mezcal. So it's a mezcal cocktail, fresh grapefruit juice, and pamplemousse liqueur, and a couple herbs, a couple spices, and stirred, and it's just like going to heaven.
Sounds delicious.
We have a barrel-aged Manhattan. We have a barrel from the Journeyman folks, where we use their whiskey to barrel age Manhattan in the restaurant.
Oh, wow.
We sell a ton of those. And then, we've got a gin cocktail called the Prince Cup, which is sort of like a horsey set kind of cocktail. But, and that's it's just wonderful. So we have a little bit of everything. But if you were sitting at our bar and looking at the bottles behind the bar, 70% of them are whiskey bottles.
That's awesome.
So
okay, all right. And when you order cocktails or make your own, what's your go-to? Or does the menu at the bar does that reflect your personal taste?
Yeah, it's I don't have a go-to. If I'm in a bar and they don't appear to have a cocktail program, and I want a cocktail, I'll either usually order a Manhattan or an Old Fashioned. Just because any bartender who knows what they're doing knows how to make that. And I don't have to worry about them screwing it up.
One would hope.
Right.
Right,
exactly.
We've nevertheless seen it done.
Yeah, right. Beyond that, like if I'm in a place where they seem to have some sort of cocktail program, I actually tend to like. There are whiskey cocktails I like, but I tend to like my whiskey on a rock. I usually don't drink it in a cocktail.
Same
cocktails,
here.
Cocktails. I love mezcal cocktails. I love tequila cocktails. Really love mezcal cocktails. Mezcal's a smoky spirit, and I think if you're a whiskey drinker, it's not a big step or a big jump to be a mezcal drinker. Mezcal.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah, Philip has recently
In fact,
introduced me to mezcal, and I was surprised because I'm not usually a tequila person, but with the mezcal, I was impressed.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to substitute an aged agave spirit, an añejo, or even an extra añejo, depending on the juice. Substitute that for whiskey in a traditional whiskey cocktail. For instance, an extra añejo tequila boulevardier. Just outstanding. All right. So, Doug, thank you very, very much. This has been a great deal of fun.
Yes, Doug, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. We look forward to coming out and meeting you in Hudson area and going to your restaurant and throwing back a few of your whiskey cocktails at the restaurant there.
I would be delighted to host you guys. It would be wonderful to see you. Thank you for calling.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Good luck with everything.
All right. Thanks. You too.
All right, guys.
World of Wheezy is up next. Stay with us.
Welcome back. On today's World of Wheezy, we're going to discuss the Edgewood Burnhead Wood. Welcome, Louise. Thanks for being with us today.
What's going on, Kerry? Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I'm looking forward to the time where we can actually be in the same room again. That'll be nice.
I couldn't agree with you more. And, even better with a little nip of something in a glass.
Of course. So why don't you tell us about this new, we just talked to Phil about this new expression from Balvenie that's in their stories portfolio. And we know you probably haven't tasted it yet, but with the tasting notes that we've received, what do you think would go well with this?
Well, I read through the notes. It's a very cool story. It has me excited to taste it. Just off the top of my head, thinking a really simple crostini with a fresh chev or some type of goat cheese, sliced fresh figs, a really green, vibrant olive oil, and maybe a little bit of fresh chervil on top would be an excellent snack to accompany this.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I think that would work.
All right. Well, we may have to do a tasting coming up and try that pairing out together.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for your time on this one, Louise, and we'll catch up with you next week.
Cheers. Can't wait to talk to you again.
Please visit our website to see our show notes on today's podcast at spiritsofwhiskey.com. That's whiskey with an E.
We'll include a link for 4whiskylovers.com and the Balvenie Stories collection in our show notes.
As always, you can see our upcoming topics and guest roster and links to past shows. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, Salam.
Slanchava.
Spirits of Whiskey is a production of First Reel Entertainment and the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and is available on Anchor, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts can be heard.